This story starts 20 years after World War II ended, and it's when something falls from the sky in a quiet Pennsylvania town. Locals think it's a meteor, until first responders go and they find it. And what it is, well, it's still warm, it's perfectly intact, and it's shaped exactly like this iron weird bell. But the strange thing is, the military arrives within minutes. But what they do next makes one thing crystal clear. This isn't space debris. In fact, this is a secret worth killing for. Okay, I want you to imagine that it's 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday in December, and it's very cold. The cold has just settled over to Westmoreland County. And inside Bluebush Farmhouse on Tibbs Run Road, 8-year-old Billy helps his mom Janet set the dinner table. And his dad Bill will be home from the Westinghouse plant any minute. Everything feels, normal, quiet, like every other winter evening in this small Pennsylvania town. But then, out of nowhere, the sky explodes. A fireball tears across the horizon, burning this orange and white, trailing green-blue sparks like a 4th of July sparkler the size of a freight train. And it screams so low over the farmhouse that Billy feels the windows start to vibrate. Billy literally drops his fork and presses his face against the kitchen window. "Mom," he shouts, "look at that." So Janet, she rushes to the window just in time to see the object disappear behind Miller's Ridge. But not before they both notice something that makes their blood freeze. Whatever this thing is, it is not burning up like a meteor should. It's slowing down, like something's controlling it. And all across Pennsylvania, people are seeing the same impossible thing. Phone lines light up from Pittsburgh to Cleveland. In Ohio, residents report chunks of this hot debris starting grass fires. But in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, people see exactly where it goes down. And just 3 miles away, volunteer firefighter Jim Romansky bolts from the dinner table when the fire siren starts wailing. He's been a volunteer for over 12 years now, and he's never heard it sound this urgent. "This is Romansky. I saw it come down near Tibbs Run. That wasn't no plane. Heading there now." So he jumps into his red pickup truck and floors it down the gravel road, past cornfields and fence posts towards the tree line where a column of this blue-gray smoke is rising like a signal fire. Half of the town saw the fireball, and half of the town is now converging on the woods right behind the Bluebush farm. So Jim, he grabs his heavy-duty flashlight and follows the trail of snapped branches and scorched leaves down into the shallow ravine. And the beam cuts through the December darkness until there, half buried in the soft earth, sitting upright like it had been gently placed there, is something that makes Jim's brain completely shut down. It's shaped like an acorn, or a bell that's turned upside down, about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, but somehow much more imposing. The surface of it is bronze-colored, seamless, with no windows, no hatches, no rivets, just a solid metallic object that seems to drink in his flashlight beam. And it's warm. Jim can feel the heat radiating off of it from 6 feet away in 30-degree weather. And that's when Bill Bluebush arrives beside him, breathing hard from running throughout the woods. And his son Billy is with him. And that's when Bill finally takes a step closer. And he notices that there are markings etched around the base. Not letters, not numbers, not, anything from any alphabet that either of them have seen. Just symbols, strange, intricate symbols that seem to shift and dance in the flickering beam. "Looks like Egyptian hieroglyphs or something," Bill murmurs. And he reaches out with his gloved hand to, trace the shape. The metal is smooth as glass and warm as human skin. And that's when Jim, kind of finds his voice and he says, "Bill, this ain't from around here." That's when they hear it. Engines, big ones, multiple vehicles, headlights sweeping through the trees like searchlights. Bill grabs his son's shoulders and he says, "Billy, get back, now." But as they watch the convoy of lights approach, one question burns in all of their minds. How did they get there so damn fast? Because within 7 minutes, Jim later times it exactly, the peaceful woods transform into what looks like a war zone. You got Pennsylvania State Police cruisers, army jeeps with government plates, unmarked trucks carrying men in military fatigues, and they're just rolling through this forest like they've done this drill 100 times before. And a Pennsylvania state trooper approaches them, his hand resting on his service weapon. You folks need to clear this area immediately. And that's when Bill Bluebush, he protests. He says, "Officer, someone could be hurt down there. I mean, we found this thing and it's not like anything." And he gets cut off. "Sir," the trooper's voice cuts like a blade, "this area is now under federal jurisdiction. You need to leave now." As more soldiers now move in with military precision, battery-powered floodlights on tripods, yellow tape, and metal stakes, a perimeter forms around the impact site like it's been choreographed. These aren't local responders trying to, figure things out as they go. These are specialists who know exactly what they're doing. Somebody then barks an order and says, "Get it covered. Nobody else gets their eyes on the target." And that's when a massive canvas tarp gets pulled over this bronze object. But not before Jim catches one last glimpse under the harsh white lights. The strange symbols around its base seem to glow faintly. And that's when a military winch gets wheeled into position. 2 soldiers now in hazmat suits begin attaching these very heavy chains. And a flatbed truck is already waiting behind the tree line, engine running. So the locals just keep getting pushed further and further back until they're standing in a frozen field watching the strangest thing that they've ever seen. Bill Bluebush, turns to his neighbor, elderly farmer Ed Kowalski, and he says, "Ed, they got here faster than our own fire department." Ed kind of nods, grimly. Way too fast, like they were already on their way. And that's when young Billy tugs on his father's coat and he says, "Dad, why won't they let you see it?" And Bill, Bill just doesn't have an answer. But as the flatbed truck carrying its mysterious cargo disappears into the night, escorted by a full military convoy, one question hangs in the cold Pennsylvania air. What in the world did they just exactly witness? That same evening, John Murphy drives from Kecksburg to WHJB radio station. He's been a reporter for 15 years. He's covered plenty of strange stories, but the phone calls flooding into the station tonight are just different. Multiple witnesses, consistent descriptions, and a military response that makes no sense for a meteor. Murphy then arrives to find the area still swarming with personnel, floodlights, radio chatter, armed guards. And so he approaches the cluster of locals who've been pushed back from the scene. "Jim," he calls out quickly to Romansky, "what really happened here?" Jim kind of looks around, nervously, and then motions Murphy to come a little bit closer. And in a voice barely a whisper, he describes what he saw, the size, the shape, the impossible smoothness of the metal, and the strange symbols that seemed almost alive under the lights. So Murphy, pulls out his cassette recorder and starts taking it all down. Other witnesses then step forward. Bill Bluebush describes the warmth, radiating from the object. Ed Kowalski talks about the military's impossible response time. Even young Billy whispers about the space writing on the metal. They all describe the exact same thing, which is so rare when you have so many different witnesses. But it was a bronze, bell-shaped craft that definitely was not space debris. So Murphy, he lifts his camera and he snaps several photos of the distant convoy. He doesn't get far, because 2 men now emerge from the darkness, one wearing a dark suit despite the December cold, the other in an Air Force uniform with an insignia Murphy does not recognize. "Mr. Murphy," the man in the suit called out, "we need to speak with you." Murphy's heart starts just hammering, "Just covering a story, gentlemen. Public has the right to know." So the Air Force officer now steps closer. This involves national security. We'll need to examine your materials. It's not a request. So reluctantly, he hands over his prized possession, his camera, and the film gets confiscated. The tape recorder disappears into the Air Force officer's briefcase. It's for analysis, the suit explains with a smile on his face. Murphy never sees any of it again. But John Murphy does not give up. 3 days later, Murphy is just sitting in his home office working by the lamplight. He has now recreated notes from memory, re-interviewed witnesses by the phone. And the story he is assembling is explosive. A structured craft of unknown origin, recovered by the military under extraordinary secrecy. Multiple witnesses describing identical, impossible details. He's just finished typing the first draft when there's a knock at his front door at 11:30 p.m. December snow is still falling outside. Murphy answers to find the same 2 men from the crash site, and they're not smiling anymore. Mr. Murphy, the Air Force officer says, stepping inside without invitation. We understand you're preparing a follow-up report. The man in the suit gets straight to business, and he says, we strongly recommend you reconsider. The official investigating concluded this was just a meteor. But what about all the witnesses, Murphy asks. Optical illusions, stress responses, people see what they want to see. So as you can tell, the message is crystal clear, stick to the meteor story, or face the consequences. So when his radio show airs the following week, the segment is titled Object in the Woods. But the version that goes out is nothing like what Murphy originally intended. Gone are the detailed witness descriptions. Gone are the questions about military response time. Gone is any suggestion that what fell in Kecksburg was anything other than a natural phenomenon. I mean, literally, Murphy sounds like a man who's reading from somebody else's script. But that's exactly what he was actually doing. And 4 years later, in 1969, John Murphy dies in a hit-and-run accident while on vacation in California. But the driver is never found, and the case is never solved. His widow discovers that all his files related to the Kecksburg incident have vanished from his home office. Well, just another coincidence, just another loose end, neatly severed. And while the people of Kecksburg were being told nothing unusual happened, the object recovered from their woods is now making a very different kind of journey. The convoy drives through the night, taking back roads, avoiding highways. Their destination was Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio, the same facility that allegedly houses debris from Roswell and other incidents the government refuses to acknowledge. Inside Hangar 18, under industrial lights that never shut off, a small group gathers around the covered object. Military officers with clearance levels that don't officially exist, along with scientists with advanced degrees and binding secrecy oaths. Colonel Robert Henderson, the base commander, gives the order. Remove the tarp. The canvas falls away, revealing the bronze object in all of its impossible glory. Even under harsh fluorescent lights, it seems to absorb illumination rather than reflect it. The surface is absolutely flawless. No seams, no rivets, no signs of atmospheric damage at all. A technical sergeant approaches with a Geiger counter. Click, 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 click. Radiation signature present, sir. Elevated but not dangerous at current distance. Colonel Henderson then turns to an older man in a gray civilian coat. The man has a slight German accent and eyes that have seen impossible things. Dr. Schwammen, Henderson says. Your assessment? Dr. Ernst Schwammen approaches slowly. The same Ernst Schwammen who once worked beneath the Owl Mountains, who once watched a similar device levitate and sing before vanishing into nothingness. His hands kind of shake as he reaches out to touch the strange symbols etched around the object's base. They're warm, just like they were 20 years ago. The shapes are identical to the one he remembers from the Die Glocke. And when Shaman finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. Mango, Die Glocke. The hangar falls completely silent. Colonel Henderson steps closer. "What did you say, Doctor?" Shaman realizes he has spoken in German, realizes that he has said too much, so he takes a deep breath and he switches to English. During the war, there was a project, highly classified, and we called it Die Glocke, the bell. He gestures towards the bronze object. Same shape, same size, same properties. Henderson's expression shifts from confusion to something much more intense. "Are you saying this object is of German origin?" "I'm saying that I've seen this exact device before, in 1945, in a bunker beneath Owl Mountain." He pauses, looking around at the assembled group. "The bell was activated one final time before our facility was destroyed. We thought it had been obliterated." Another pause. "But what if it wasn't destroyed? What if it traveled?" The implications hit the room like a shockwave. Time travel? Dimensional displacement? Technology decades ahead of anything they thought possible? Colonel Henderson addresses the entire group with military precision. "Gentlemen, what's discussed in this hangar stays in this hangar indefinitely." Over the following months, the object is subjected to every test that the facility can perform, but the results only deepen the mystery. You see, the alloy is a metal that doesn't match any known composition. The symbols remain completely unreadable, and despite extensive examination, no one can find any way to open it or determine the purpose of it. And after 6 months, the object is moved to an even more secure location. The files are classified at levels that require presidential authorization to access. And Dr. Ernst Schwamann is quietly transferred to a research facility in Nevada, where he spends the rest of his career working on projects that officially don't exist. And he never speaks about the bell again. But sometimes late at night, colleagues hear him humming a strange harmonic tune. Beautiful and haunting, like the sound of a church bell forged in another dimension. For decades, the Kecksburg incident remained officially unsolved, but unofficially forgotten. The Air Force's Project Blue Book filed it under insufficient data. NASA eventually claimed that their experts had examined the metallic fragments and determined they came from a Soviet satellite. Yeah. But then, of course, conveniently lost all records of that analysis in the 1980s, kind of like, how they taped over the moon landing. And so the witnesses grew older. Some moved away. Others simply just stopped talking about it. But they never forgot what they saw. And slowly, quietly, researchers began connecting the dots the government preferred to keep separate. The shape of the object, the warm, seamless metal, the unreadable symbols, the impossible speed of the military response, the systematic silencing of witnesses. It all pointed to something else, something that had vanished from Nazi Germany exactly 20 years earlier. Die Glocke. According to the most compelling theories, the bell wasn't just an experimental weapon. It was a machine that could manipulate space and time itself, a device that didn't just disappear in 1945. But it displaced itself to another moment and to another location, which would be December 9th, 1965, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Other theories suggest that Kammler didn't die at war's end, and that he escaped with the bell's technology and struck a deal with American intelligence, and that what fell in Kecksburg wasn't an accident, but a test. The truth, may be simpler than either explanation, or stranger than both. But when you look at the documented facts, the government seizure of evidence, the silencing of witnesses, and the mysterious deaths, it stops sounding like a conspiracy theory. And it starts sounding like the most successful cover-up in American history. 2 objects, 2 moments frozen in time, in one impossible shape. The bell vanishes from Nazi Germany in 1945, and then a bronze acorn falls from the Pennsylvania sky in 1965. and the only thing connecting them is a wall of government silence that's never been breached. But maybe that connection isn't just theoretical. Maybe it's literal. Maybe when Hans Kammler activated Die Glocke for the final time, standing in that bunker as the Third Reich collapsed around him, the machine didn't just disappear. Maybe it jumped. And it jumped 20 years into the future, from a collapsing Nazi bunker to a quiet Pennsylvania forest. And maybe, it wasn't supposed to end up there. But from one secret to another, we may never know. Maybe what the people of Kecksburg saw falling from the sky that December evening wasn't a meteor or a satellite or a craft from another world. Maybe it was just an echo of Nazi Germany's darkest experiment, finally completing a journey that began in the depths of a mountain and ended in the hills of Pennsylvania. The bell had vanished in 1945, but in 1965, it came home. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you see the other side of this story. Carol Ann from the In-Between just uploaded her Die Glocke episode. The link is in the description, and trust me, you'll want to see what she found. That's all I got for you this week, and I'll see you soon. And thank you so much to Carol Ann and the In-Between for doing this collaboration. It truly means a lot. Stay blessed. Cheers.